Okay, welcome to IELTS9PRO. Time for me to comment on your introductions once again. Okay, so as before, we'll take a look at my sample introduction and I'll show you how I've paraphrased it and how the essay would work and where it would go. And then we'll take a look at yours. Let me just make sure I've got the changes on. Okay, that's good. So, advantages and disadvantages question. Now, there's three different types of this type of question. It might simply ask, as it does here, what do you think were the advantages and disadvantages of etc. It may say, what are the advantages and disadvantages, and give your opinion. Or it might say, do the advantages outweigh the disadvantages? So it's like three broad aspects of this kind of question. But here we only have simply asking, what do you think were the advantages and disadvantages? It isn't saying, or it's not asking you to say which is better or worse. It's simply a comparison. So in that sense, it's kind of like a discussion essay. Yeah. Okay, so in the past, most people lived in small villages where everyone knew everyone else. Nowadays, most people live in large cities where they only know a few people in their area. So that's the context, that's the background. What do you think were the advantages and disadvantages of living in a small community? So that's the question. So it's not talking about anything else about what's the advantages of living in a city, or it's specifically focused on living in a small community. So it's in the past. So currently, it's common for the majority of people to live in cities where they might not know very many people. So essentially, I've paraphrased that. So I've taken the second sentence and I've put that first. As I've said before, in paraphrasing, you can change the word form, find a synonym, you can make it passive in, passive active, change those around, you can change the order. So here, I took the second part and put it first. So it's common for the majority of people to live in cities where they might not know very many people. Okay. The second part, in the past, most people lived in small villages where everyone knew everyone else. So I've changed that to, this is in marked contrast to the past, where village life meant no one was a stranger. So you can see how I've paraphrased that. Instead of, where everyone knew everyone else as a positive, I've changed it here, no one was a stranger. Okay, so you can see how I've changed the phrasing round. I've taken the ideas, changed them round from back to front, essentially. Okay, so now what you have to do now is to answer the question. Now, a lot of the introductions which we see in these videos, and if you take a look at the series, you'll see, indeed, in the last video commentary that I made, one of the main points that I made was that there was like roughly half of the people had answered the question, and they said, the answers are blah 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 blah. However, equally, another half said, in this essay I will answer the question, or something such as that. In this essay I will discuss both views, I will answer the question, which is not answering anything. It's an empty sentence. So what we have to do then, again, answer the question. I've shown you the criteria before. Excuse me. Band 9, task response, clear, direct, a position that directly answers the question. So, in my view, because it says, what do you think? In my view, the benefits, advantages of living in a small community in a village were a feeling of safety and of belonging. So, for paragraph 2 of this essay, and I might share the complete essay later for you to have a look at. So what I would be talking about here, well, in fact, what I do talk about is how the major benefits, you feel safe because you know everybody. You can leave your doors open, you know your neighbours, you're all kind of friends. Well, maybe not friends, but you know each other well, Okay? There's no strangers, there's no outsiders, and it makes you feel like you belong to a community. However, in a city, a major city, that's probably not the case. So, what's the disadvantages then? What's the disadvantages or the drawbacks, or I say the major drawbacks of living in such a small community? So, you feel safe, you belong, you know everyone, etc. But the drawbacks is a lack of opportunities. If it's a village, you probably don't have a university. You might have a school, maybe, but there's no college, there's no university. And what kind of employment opportunities might you find in a village? I mean, this is why, these days in the West, the only people living in villages are self-employed or retired, because there's no jobs apart from working in the local shops, if they do have any shops, maybe working in the bar, in the local pub, maybe you might have a garage, etc. But apart from those jobs, which are probably owned by people living in the village, there's nothing. So these are the obvious major disadvantages of living in a small community. There's no study and no jobs. If you're a young person, you've got to leave. Okay, so let's take a look at yours now. Let's see what you can do. So, many people were living in small areas like villages, or simply were living in villages where they were all known by others in the past. Okay, so that's not too bad for a paraphrase. You don't really need all that, because just many people were living in villages. But today we don't need that, because it's not it's not possessive. A lot of people are living in large cities where a small ratio of people, well, a small number, a number is not the same as a ratio. Small number of people are known by them in the region. Well, it's not a region. A city is not a region, is it? Not usually, when a lot of people are known by them, or who only know. I don't know why this is passive. It would work better in active voice. A lot of people are living in large cities where they only know a small number of people. That works better in active voice rather than in passive. I believe a major drawback in living in A, now we need an indefinite article because a small community is countable, is the lack on a lot of speciality. What it's usually lack of, in terms of a preposition, a collocation, is the lack of a lot of speciality. I don't know what I can kind of guess, but I'm not really. That's not clear what you mean there. Which might needed. What if that's passive? It should be you need your form of be, which might be needed by people, and make them do hard working. Well, make them so. I'm not clear. I have no real idea what that means. Sorry, I don't want to be harsh, but a major drawback is a lack of speciality. Speciality in what? Which might be. That's not very clear at all. Also, it would had. What you mean? It would have. Some beneficial points like tightened relationships between the people, which make them or which makes them helpful to each other, or which makes them help each other, I think is better. Okay, so the first part's not too bad, but this sentence here, I've no real idea what it's talking about. and this one's a little clearer. I can kind of understand it was a closer, maybe closer is better instead of tightened relationship, which made them help each other. Okay, in comparison to today's world, the common lifestyle in the past was living in the rural areas and small towns. Villages are not towns. Towns are usually village, town, and city. So a town is not, strictly speaking, a village. Living in such societies where everyone knows others, or where everyone knows each other or everyone, but provide citizens with a peaceful atmosphere. Well, you're not citizens, because usually that's citizens of a state or citizens of a city. So, okay, would provide villagers. If you live in a village, usually the noun for that will be a villager. Okay, with a peaceful atmosphere and keep away from traffic congestion. In the past, there was traffic congestion in the past, because it's talking about the common lifestyle in the past. Okay, so it's talking about traffic congestion. Okay, due to less communication caused by this. How could you live in a village? Surely there's more communication, because as we said here, it's like, so right, in the past people lived in small villages where everyone knew everyone else. So that doesn't really imply a lack of communication, though. Really, doesn't that imply that there would be more, because you know everybody? Well, there's, like today in the city, I mean, for example, in my apartment block, I don't know, I mean, I say hello to 2 or 3 people, but a lot of the people in the apartment block, those who live higher up, I've never met them. I've never spoke to them. So surely living in the city, you would have less communication and more. If you're talking about interpersonal communication, surely you would have more living in a village. So people usually have mostly no effective opportunity to improve their social skills. I think you must have got this the wrong way around. In a city, there's no opportunity, or I don't want to be too harsh, but this seems to be a little bit contradictory. Seems to be a little bit mixed up. So, living in such societies, okay, in villages, so everybody knows each other, so presumably they must be communicating, would provide a citizen with a peaceful atmosphere and keep away from traffic congestion. Well, would there really be traffic congestion in a village? Because it's not a city, it's a village, so there's not a lot of people there. So would you have traffic congestion in a village? And then, due to less communication, well, surely you basically just said that there would be more, because you know people in a village. So I'm not really sure. This seems to be somewhat contradictory. It's a little bit confusing. Okay, most people in the past used to reside in small communities where they knew each other well. Okay, good. Today, a majority of people, okay, very good. 2 very clear sentences. In my view, the tranquility of villages and towns, well, it's not it's not towns. Continual bustle is one of the most definite advantages. Very good. However, basically, right now, this is pretty good, right? Once again, so you can see we've got a paraphrase for sentence 1, good paraphrase for sentence 2, and then we've got clear advantages and disadvantages. So presumably in this essay, paragraph 2, you will be talking about the tranquility and how that's an advantage. Okay, good. However, and this is basically the same, more or less the same idea that I put forward in my introduction. Basic, I mean, it is education, public transport. You don't have any metro, any trains. You might have some buses, but education, yeah, and transportation system. Okay, so that's pretty good. So let's continue. So nowadays, majority, right? Is it a majority or the majority of people used to live in rural areas in which they were known to each other? Most people in urban areas. Okay, good. Right. What do we have here? What do we have? We have empty sentence. No. So the first part's good. It's good, clear, paraphrasing. But then, if it says, I will discuss. Okay. So, as I said, these empty sentences, it's not what the examiners want. Which is better? Is this better? So the reader knows where it's going. Oh, tranquility versus education. Or in this essay, I will discuss something, but I'm not going to tell you. Which is better? Well, we know which is better. These are better. Okay, so the final one. Formerly, villages were more crowded. Where does it say that? More crowded? And villages were totally familiar. Well, maybe not totally familiar, but they did know everyone else. Whereas urban people just know a couple of individuals in the present time around the whole neighbourhood. This is quite a long sentence. We've got clause. I would have made that into 2 sentences. However what? We don't really need that. Why do we have that? Believe that residing in a small group of people had benefits such as better communications and the least pollution or less pollution. It had drawbacks and less pollution. However, you can put that however here. It had drawbacks including slow development and restricted job opportunities. Okay, so that's not so bad. We've got some clear advantages and disadvantages. I think I would rephrase that because we've got several different clauses and people in the present time around their neighbourhood. You could have made that a little easier, I think. But okay, but then we have some clear advantages and disadvantages. I would put the however, I would move the adverb and put it there. Put it there before the disadvantages. So, not too bad. There's my introduction, my example, and we can see, okay, that one's not too bad. As I said, that sentence I'm not really clear about at all, so that needs a bit of reworking. That one's pretty good, okay. Not too bad. Empty sentence, and etc. Okay, good, sweet. So we'll post another topic. I might even post a complete essay, and I look forward to reading your next batch of introductions. Okay, I'll see you then.